Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, live and in person from beautiful Tennessee, where you don't know if it's going to rain or snow or be beautiful. We are going to talk about all the different springs in the engine today. And there are more springs in there than you think there are. And we're going to talk about some of them today. Give me a sound check. See if you can hear me all right. While I adjust your set. Let's see if this is better. All right. Who's on there? Hey, Timothy, Chuck, Matt, Theodore, Jack, Charlie. Hey, Chuck, Stanley. Jackie, turn that back up.
It's shining right on the screen.
It got too dull. I thought the power was going out.
The light is shining right into the camera.
It's not anymore. I was adjusting your set. Allowed me to adjust for your set. Okay. Stanley, I was trying to talk and read these names, and I saw the power go down, and I was like, wow, what happened? And Jackie was dimming the light for me, helping me out. It's the way my brain works. I have to focus on what I'm doing, or it gets kind of off track. So when people call me or text me or send me a message while I'm doing Tech Talk Live, it kind of a little bit trips me up, but that's okay. I'm going to get over it. I'm going to adjust the set one more time, y'all, while I'm talking. But anyway, we're going to talk about springs. And I'm not talking about only valve springs, but I'm talking about the springs in the engine. And if this is a little bit glare, I'm going to adjust accordingly. There we go. Almost there. All right, Stanley, Timothy. Let's see who all I got. Matt, Theodore, Ed, Bradford. Yep, got some cool names coming on. Hey, Tom, Daryl, Jason, Chuck again, Steve, and Dennis, and Greg. Hey, y'all. All right, Tech Talk Tuesday, number 128. I'm going to sit down here a minute and tell y'all how thankful I am that Tech Talk. Hey, Jeff, happy birthday. Stanley, thank y'all. I want to tell y'all, thank you for watching Tech Talk Tuesday, every Tuesday. The ones that are religious about coming in here, the faithful that look every week, thank you for that. The ones that are new, or you only come in every now and then, let's try to, hey, there's Steve Wetzel. I try and get some of you guys to, I appreciate you when you click in. Hey, Greg, Stephen, there's some cool names coming in. All right, so what I was going to say is about the springs in the engine. There are a lot, and we're going to talk about different ones. We're going to talk about of course, the springs in the cylinder heads that control the valves. That's one big spring, and then there's one. One of the biggest springs in our engine is one of these guys right here. No, George, that's a push rod. Yeah, but it is a type of spring. This right here, when this flexes and bends, and then it compresses and unwinds, you bend, and then when it responds, it's just like a spring. This spring right here will bend this way, and then respond, and it ends up being, it winds up. You can bend this, and then it's like a pole vault. Try and visualize in your mind the competitor with the pole vault. I'm gonna go up a little bit higher. With competitor with the pole vault, it's gonna bend the spring. It's straight, and then they bend it, and then they turn around, and this goes back to straight, and when it does, it gives it unbelievable force this way. When you bend it this way and then it responds and rebounds, it gives you unbelievable force back that way. So you end up with a yin and a yang. And remember, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That's just the physics we talk about. So one thing we've learned is a stiff push rod creates a lot of different results than a flimsy or flexible push rod. And I want to talk about that a minute. And I want to tell you that there are a lot of push rods on the market. I've seen in my day, since I've been racing and building engines, I've seen push rods go from, let's say, aluminum, titanium, super lightweight, and then people try to also create a situation where they have a stiff push rod. And the new style today in 2022 is to have a push rod that is very stiff, and whatever action you put into it, it returns out the other end. Whereas a flexible push rod like this one, this is a thin wall, super lightweight. This is the ones that come in the S&S engines. Like if you bought a 143 or a 124 or any S&S engine that has adjustable push rods in it, this is the style they've been using since probably over 20, 30 years for an adjustable push rod. The end that goes on here, and listen, I'm telling you this, y'all, this is not a judgment show about what push rod is better or anything about a brand. I'm just going to tell you what to look for in your program, because your stock push rods are stiffer than this right here. When you get your new Harley with your new push rods, or your new LS Chevrolet, or your Hemi and your Dodge Charger or your Challenger, the stock push rods have a wall thickness of X, and they don't have adjustability on them. And the adjustable part here, you know, we look at this push rod and we say, I'm gonna get it up here where you can see it. With this part is what we look at. Well, this is real thin wall, super thin wall steel. It's very lightweight, and this threaded part here has a giant hole through it, and I'm gonna show you out the other end of it. So, yep, you can see light out the other end of it there. Yep. Now, the cross section right here, let me get a caliper and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'll flip this back around. I'm sorry. I wanted y'all to see I was really here. I'm really going to go back to the camera, to the board now. All right, this works better for seeing what I'm talking about. And I'll look at what I'm doing, and then I'll look at the camera, the results. Okay, so I can see here that the cross-sectional area on this one is 80 thou, 78 thou. You can see how big the hole is. There we go. That's a good view. I got to get the light just right. Y'all see that? This hole through the middle of this piece, it's a big one. 150 thousandths hole through the center of a part that is only 310 in diameter. 150 and 310. What's the difference? 150, 160, 80 wall in here. This is only 80 wall. I'm scared of that because the skinniest place is right here. And if you bought this push rod and said, I want a 438 thou push rod, 438 OD, but it has 150 ID in the skinniest part, it's not very strong. Now, the one that, there's a lot of them on the market. Like I said, here's a Screaming Eagle Milwaukee 8 push rod. That's all. One thing that's good about this piece that I like is it's one piece. All of this is made one piece. There's no pressed in parts. This is one piece. The nut is made onto it. And the adjustable area, the adjustable part, if you'll look, it has a hole big enough for the oil to go through, which is all we need. But look how thick the cross section is here. This is 370 wall, 370 OD with only a 90 thou hole. So the cross section here through the threaded part is big. It's 138 versus 80. That's almost double. So if I put the two pieces up here where you can see them together, you could guess which one's stronger. I'm trying to get this light to work for me. It's a little bit struggle. One time the light's too much and one time it's not. Oh, look at that. That's golden. You can see the thin wall one on the left and the thick wall one on the right. Also, you can see that this one has a better chance of being stiff than this one because of this, the diameter of it. Like if this was a bolt, this would be a way bigger bolt than this one. Now I'm going to screw them together and let you look at them so we can see what's up. That's a lot of adjustment, and I'm going to give you a tip about that. You want to run this, you don't want to have this extended all the way out because the weakest part is the threaded part. So when you run your push rods and you get them the right length for your combination, you want this to be as far up in here as it can be so that you end up with a less flexible flyer here. And there is a very stout adjustable push rod because of cross section and diameters. Now this one, on the other hand, this one's the thin, this is the thin wall one. And it's very long, and you can buy them in different lengths, especially from S&S. They have different length ones available. But if you put this push rod together and you look at this push rod, and I'm gonna go down here now and look up at this so that I can quit standing on my tippy toes. There we go. Alrighty. Now you can see that this one has a bigger cross section here, but this thread is all going inside of that. So this part is really thin and this part is really thick. So the part that kind of worries me about the S&S one, see how small the hole is for the oil on this one? See how small the hole is compared to this one? Why is that hole on this part so small when the push rod oil hole is this big? This is where the oil goes through the push rod. They're trying to do that to make it light, and then they let the outlet be this size. So this holds a lot of oil, but it doesn't have any stout. It doesn't have any strength to it. It's, if you were to, you could bend this pretty easy compared to this one. It won't bend because it's heavy duty and stout. Now let's talk about that for just a minute, about what our goal is with push rod weights. People say, well, we need lightweight valves, we need lightweight springs, we need lightweight retainers, we need lightweight, all those parts. Hang with me. I gave up on the tripod, y'all. Oh, bear with me a minute as we learn. I'm going to move over here and I'm going to show a rocker arm. Let's see how I can draw a Milwaukee 8 rocker arm. It's got a pivot shaft. It has an arm here for the push rod to go into. All right, and over here, it has a little rocker on it, pad, for us to go against the valve tip. Little rub pad. On the valve side, we got keepers, we got retainers, then we got springs, we got a spring base, we got a seal, and then the valve head goes into the port. Okay, all of this, everything over here matters on the weight a lot. The valve weight is very important. The spring weight is very important. And then the titanium or steel retainer is very important. And then the weight of the keepers, like I said, the weight of the valves. But after that, the weight of this, and if you get a roller, that's cool. You get a little wheel on here to roll on it. The weight of this doesn't matter, and the weight of this doesn't matter. What you want on a rock arm, this is a spring also, y'all. This rock arm is going to go, it runs like this when the engine's going at full speed. And the camshaft's trying to force this push rod up at maximum force. And then this rocker arm takes all of this stress and puts it into this pivot and then tries to break this arm off to push this valve down. This is a spring. This push rod is a spring like a pole vault. And this valve is also a spring because this valve, when it opens, the stem tries to shove through the head of the valve, tries to shove the stem through. And then when the valve shuts, the spring is trying to bring the top of the valve back. And when the head of the valve hits when the valve head hits the seat of the head, this stem tries to keep growing. So this valve, the head of this valve, the stem pushes it in to open it, and then the spring pulls the stem back up. And when the valve hits the seat, the spring keeps going and the stem keeps going. So the head of this valve, as while it's running, the head of the valve is doing this. So this valve is like a spring. So a super lightweight, flimsy valve is not going to hold up. You guys that are trying to run those baggers and run these racing engines all over the country, going to Sturgis and back and Daytona and back, it's a little bit scary with some of these racing parts because they're not made for street use. Now, if you get a heavy-duty valve, like super heavy-duty, it's got a strong head on it, it's got a really strong valve spring, it's got really strong retainers, and it's got really strong locks, this has more chance of living on the highway than the stock stuff. These rocker arms are definitely bending. The push rod's trying to bend this arm up, and the valve spring and the rod, and the piston, and the valve spring and the valve are trying to bend this arm up. So these fail, and they have been slowly improved through evolution over the years to come up with a stronger and stronger part. If you've seen the new automotive rock arms from Jezel, at one time a rock arm was just a piece that, just a little flimsy thing, and someone thought that a rock arm needed to be lightweight. So they made these really lightweight. And then when the Spintron was invented, where they could look at this stuff with a laser, a high-speed camera, and with a strobe light at 10,000, 11,000 RPM, they could see this thing was flopping around. They could see the valve was oil canning, like dunk, dunk, dunk. The stem was bending, and then the stem was going up and down, and the valve was getting longer and shorter and longer and shorter. They could also see this push rod over here acting like a pole vault, bending here and then recoil, and then bending and recoil. And this rock arm bends and recoils, and this valve bends and recoils. And I didn't even talk about what this spring does. This is the spring we know about. When we buy high-performance springs for our engine, we're focused on this shiny thing that holds the valve retainers and holds the valve shut. But back to when you've seen if you've seen the automotive ones like Jezel makes for the LS1 and stuff now, they've got an adjuster over here, and they got this big giant blade on top. And this rock arm is made like this, and that is so it can't bend and it can't bend. this part right here, it can't fold up. And if you look at it from, this is a side view, if you look at it from the long view, the blade looks like this from the top, and it has a roller wheel here, it has a trunnion bearing here, and it has a push rod cup here. And that's looking at it from the top, because they don't bend sideways, they bend this way. Now, there's another spring we have in our Harley engines, and it's the rocker arm, this rocker arm over here. This is like a torsion bar, and I'm going to jack this up just a hair and show you what I mean by that. On your Milwaukee 8, you have a rock arm that has a trunnion. It has a valve opener, because it has 2 intake valves, and it also has a push rod arm. And the trunnion, there's a shaft that goes through here that goes all the way through the middle. It bolts to the head. And we've seen these people put studs here and people put bolts here. But let me tell you what this thing's doing. When this push rod comes up on this arm, and this arm pushes the intake valve down, and this arm pushes the intake valve down, if you turn this, looking at it from the top view, and turn it around 90 degrees and look at the end view, this is what that torsion bar looks like. Here's the trunnion. Here's the push rod arm. And then here's the 2 arms that open the valves. There's 2 of them over here. One for the one intake valve, one for the other intake valve. So this is a bar, like over here. And I call it a torsion bar, because when this moves, pushes up, and it pushes this down, this rock arm's doing this. Just like right here. These are twisting. So this is trying to go up, this is trying to go down, so this whole thing, this bar is twisting. That's a different kind of spring. It's a torsion bar. Did you know that Mopars, Chrysler, and all those cool cars they had back in the 60s and 70s, they had torsion bar front ends on them. They didn't even have springs. In order for the front wheel to go up and down, they had to bend a bar. They had to twist a bar, and it was called a torsion bar. And I'm not going to teach you about that right now, but I just want you to know that is a spring. And another spring we have in our engine is the crankshaft. Poor old crankshaft is a spring. I mean, we don't want it to be, but it is. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So you've got a pinion shaft that drives the camshaft over on the cam side where the cam chest goes. Then you got a main bearing, and then you've got a flywheel, then you've got a rod pin, and then you got another flywheel, and then over here you got a drive. That's the power output shaft. This is where compensator goes here, and the chain and sprockets to go to the clutch go on this end, on the drive end. Then you got a flywheel, then you got a rod pin, and then you got another flywheel, and then you got a main bearing, and you got a pinion shaft. Okay, now there's another main bearing right here, and that's where the compensator goes. This is the main bearing. Now there's some people on their cases, they want to put a Timken bearing in there, and some people like the roller bearing. I like the roller bearing myself. Timken bearing is, in my opinion, it was designed for like a trailer wheel or a front tire on a car, where if you've ever changed the bearings on a car wheel, you have a hub, and you also have a shaft, and it has 2 bearings here and here, and the bearings are beveled, and you have to tighten these against each other so that it creates the thrust load left and right. That's how you do a front wheel on a car, or front hub, or a bearing on a trailer. I don't like that, because you have to tighten these against each other, against their races, and you have to tighten them up until there's no play. and it creates a ton of friction there. And Harleys were built that way back in the day, and the cars and trucks and all the trailers are all built with this kind of bearing. So the motorcycle guys want to take a new style which has a roller bearing on the left and a roller bearing on the right, which is free and has no side load to it. They want to leave that in. They want to take it out and put a Timken bearing in, which is not, you guys that sell Timken bearings and install Timken bearings, that's good for you, man. But I'm just telling you, they quit doing it. They quit putting them in. And what they do now, the Pro Stock engine that we ran for 15 years, the S&S Pro Stock engine, we had a roller bearing here, or a ball bearing. We were fortunate enough. And then over here, we had the factory Harley-Davidson 5,000 RPM black bearing that went right over here. And we turned it 11,000 RPM, and we hold the crankshaft in there on the S&S Pro Stock engine, so it has 2 roller bearings. Now, what stops the crankshaft from going left and right? Because if it goes left, it's going to beat up everything in the cam chest. If it goes right, it's going to pull against all the bearings in the cam chest. And I'm going to tell you what, you wish your crankshaft would, since it's just going this way, that it would stay centered, but it does not. It definitely wants to move around and move around. So we got to come up with a way to control the left or right movement. And the way Harley does it now, I like. They do it where they have the compensator, the compensator, the rotor, and the compensator. All these parts have a fit to them. When you torque this bolt on the end of the crank, it tightens all of it up over here so that all the end play is set here, and the crankshaft gets to move around to find its own center without wearing out parts left and right. Now this spring here, when the crankshaft rolls around to the rods at the bottom and it's pulling the piston down, or if it's rolled around to the top where the piston's trying to come off, or if it's rolled around to the bottom where the compressions and the power is pushing the piston down, and then if it rolls around to the top for the exhaust stroke, this giant flywheel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces, this thing's going like this. The rod goes down, the rod goes up, the rod goes down, the rod goes up. So this whole thing is a flexi flyer. And the big buzz on the internet is buy you a runout measuring tool so you can go over here or go over here and you can put a dial indicator here and look and see what your runout is. And then the internet form is if you don't have more than 4 or 5 thou runout, your crank is good, so you can do anything you want. Well, in reality, this piece here, when it's running down the track and the flywheels are going like this, and the rod's going up and the rod's going down, this pinion shaft is over here waving around in the cam chest over here, and then you've got an oil pump cam plate that you say, I want a bronze bushing here, or I want an anodized hole for the cam plate, or I want just this or just that, or I need a bearing over here. That's because this pinion shaft is far enough away from the center of this crankshaft that it's over here waving around like this. The end of this crankshaft is going like this because the flywheels are going like this. I mean, think about it. This piece over here is flopping around, and when you get when this pin bends where the rods are, when this bends, and it finally will, gets so far out of whack that it will take out the oil pump, it will take out the cam plate, and if you buy a red cam plate or a blue cam plate or a silver cam plate, the cam plate and just the little bolts that hold it on cannot control the bending that this giant crankshaft flywheel spring is doing. Dynamically, this part is moving like this. In reality, it's sitting on the table, and your crank builder is doing a great job putting an indicator here and an indicator here, and he makes it as straight as he can. But after you run it, and while it is running in a dynamic motion, it's working. It's working. I got another day to tell you about my ideas on crankshaft stuff, but I wanted to tell y'all, again, I see several people on here, and this is not just Harley stuff, y'all. Even a V8 guy, crankshaft, it's got 8 cylinders on it, and the crankshaft has a giant spring. It's a giant torsion bar. And they made camshafts bigger and bigger and bigger on the V8s because the camshaft has a giant spring like a torsion bar. So I don't even know how many springs there are in an engine, but they don't call them all springs. The only one they really call a spring is the one that goes on the valve. but every part in there that's moving dynamically acts and lives like a spring. It winds up, it unwinds, it coils, it rebounds, and it will wear out a bunch of stuff and it'll wreck a bunch of stuff. So look, quit trying to get everything lightweight. Get you some good heavy-duty parts that may bend a little bit and may return a little bit, but you don't want the light stuff flopping around, okay? Thank you all for watching. May God bless you all. Look, Happy New Year. Tech Talk number 128 is in the books. I am so glad and thankful you guys come back and see me next Tuesday, and I love the feedback. Look, tell me if you like the lesson. Tell me what you want to know about. I try to listen to you guys. It makes a big difference. One more thing, y'all. Jackie recorded it. She's going to put it on, let's see, YouTube. It will be recorded there and will be listed as Tech Talk 128 and be talking about springs and rebound. And also we will be showing this on Star Racing page maybe tomorrow. And also this is always here. It's recorded so you can see it. If you're late and you wanted to come live, thank you. But that's not the only way to see it. God bless y'all. Good night.